Today you learn the product and the quotient rule. And the question is this: suppose you have two functions that are being multiplied together and you're taking the derivative. What is the rule? It's not simply f prime times g prime, but rather it's f prime times g left alone plus g prime times f left alone. And if you have the quotient rule, say f divided by g prime, it really stays just about the same. You take the derivative of the top function, f prime, times the bottom left alone. Oh boy. Come on. There it goes. Turn to red. Sorry, YouTuber, I mean, smartboard malfunctions. There we go. Times g, and then it's minus g prime times f. Somewhat predictable, right? I think you got to divide it all by the bottom square. So last year I was sitting in this is a classic example, example 2, where we're going to use the quotient rule. Everybody see that you have two functions that are divided? So I'm going to use the quotient rule to find the derivative. So what I do is I take f prime, and the quotient rule says derivative of the top. What's the derivative of the top? 2x times the bottom left alone, x minus 1. Then it's subtraction. And you subtract the derivative of the bottom, 1, times the top left alone, divided by the bottom squared. Now, it's simplified when we've combined any like terms that can be combined, and when we've eliminated any pieces that can be canceled. Can you combine anything in the numerator? Looks like we're going to get a 2x squared minus x squared. Everybody agree? So I have an x squared in the numerator. It looks like I have 2x times negative 1, which is a negative 2x. And that's the derivative. Quotient rule. See it? Okay, for the next one, you're going to do this on your assignment. Here's what I want you to do first. I want you to use the power rule. And in order to use the power rule, you first need to multiply this out. So you and your partner right now, check with them, but just FOIL this on out, and then take the derivative using the power rule. Okay? Check to make sure you come up with the same thing. We're going to do it two different ways. Go. Did you get 40x cubed minus 12x squared minus 60x plus 12? Okay, so here's where I'm trying to make my point. Josie asked a great question yesterday. Why didn't you teach us the shortcut rule earlier? Okay. Well, part of it is I see what we're preparing for, but this is a key point right here. You could always take this. You could always take this and simply just multiply it out and use the chain rule or use the power rule in that way. However, eventually the problem's not going to look like that. The problem's going to look like this: 3x squared times cosine of x. And so there you have a product rule that's in need, and you can't simply just multiply that out. It's not simply just 6x times something there. We have to use the product rule. So you haven't learned yet the derivative of sine or cosine or e to the x or natural log of x or tangent. You're going to learn all that stuff. You're going to be very good at it, actually. But that's what we're kind of preparing you for. So that's the first way of doing it. Here's the second way of doing it. Let's see if we get the same thing. I'm going to use the product rule. Can somebody tell me what's the derivative of 2x squared minus 6? 4x times the second part left alone, 5x squared minus 2x. That's what the product rule says. Take the derivative of the first part, leave the second part left alone, plus derivative of the second part. 10x minus 2 times 2x squared minus 6. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to verify that these are in fact the same. So I would have 20x cubed minus 8x squared plus 20x cubed minus 60x minus 4x squared plus 12. So I went ahead and FOILed that out. Do we have a 40x cubed here? Yep, we do. Do we have a negative 12x squared? Yep. Do we have a negative 60x? And do we have a positive 12? Yeah. We're good, huh? So when you look at letter C, what rule comes to mind for you? Product or quotient or power? Quotient, because you see division. Sometimes there's a better option than using the quotient rule. Sometimes you can just divide it out. F of x is equal to, I'm going to rewrite this, x to the 1/2 minus x to the 1 over x to the 1/2. I'm going to divide each of these terms by x to the 1/2. What is x to the 1/2 divided by x to the 1/2? 1. Minus, what's x to the 1 divided by x to the 1/2? What do we do with exponents when we're dividing? We starts with an S, rhymes with subtract. We subtract. We take the 1 minus the 1/2 and you get 1/2. These two expressions are the same. Let's take the derivative. What's the derivative of a 1? 0. What's the derivative of negative x to the 1/2? Yeah, and we are not going to leave a negative exponent. So we have negative 1 over 2 roots of x. That's our derivative. So you see, sometimes the product rule works great. Sometimes the quotient rule works great. Sometimes it's just better to rewrite it. And sometimes it's up to you how you'd like to try it. So here's the kind of question I would love to give you on the test. These right here, these are great questions. We have a table, okay? It says find the following, f minus g prime of 3. So to take that derivative, we take f prime of 3 minus g prime of 3. As you look at the table, can anybody tell me what f prime of 3 is? Negative 2 minus g prime of 3. Negative 1. Add the opposite, and I get negative 1. This would be f prime of 4 plus g prime of 4. What is the derivative at 4? 1. Plus 2. So understand that when the AP exam asks this next question, understand why people get it wrong. It says f times g prime of 5. What do you think people try? F prime of 5 times g prime of 5, which is entirely incorrect. It's f prime of 5 times g of 5 plus g prime of 5 times f of 5. You see the difference? Knowing to use the product rule. What is f prime of 5? What's g of 5? Isn't that awesome? Plus g prime of 5. 1 times f of 5. 6. And we get 6. You try letter D on your own. Looks like a lot of people got 1/8. Is there any concern here? We all good? Okay, then here we go. Love this question. And I want to be clear that when Bailey sees this question on the test, her first kind of inkling inside might be to make it more challenging than what it needs to be. Would you like me to save you from that moment? I'm going to save you right now from that moment, okay? And let me show you how that's going to happen. It says write equation for line tangent. What two things do I need? Slope and a point. Great, we got to start. So what's the x value of the point? 0. How do we calculate the y value? Plug it in. If you plug in 0, what do you get? You get 0. Isn't that great? Now we need slope. How do we find slope? We take the derivative. What rule do we use to take the derivative? The quotient. So f prime of x is equal to, actually I'm going to write it down here. I need a little bit more space, I think. F prime of x is equal to derivative of the top, 4 times the bottom, minus what? Derivative of the bottom would be minus 1 times 4x all over now. I'm going to forget about Bailey right now because I think she's in a better spot. We're going to talk about Sam. Sam right now is freaking out. She's saying, my gosh, you're going to make me combine like terms, look to factor, look to cancel. No. Does the problem say give the derivative in the simplest form? No, it says write the equation for the stick and tangent line. No. But it's going to give us the answer without having to simplify it. Folks, we just need the slope, right? So you don't have to simplify first, just plug in 0. So I don't know how many times I get to people, they get to the test, and they're doing all sorts of algebra here at this point. I'm like, just let go of it, folks. Okay, I've got 4 times, what do you get if you plug in 0 here? 2 minus, if I plug in 0 here, I get negative 1 times 0 over 4. So you get 2. Slope, point. What's the x value? 0. What's the y value? 3. So a lot of you are seeing that when you plug in 0, all of that goes away and all of that goes away. You're left with 3 times 1 is 3. In fact, you know the y-intercept is 3, right? If it goes through 0, 3, is that not the y-intercept? So it's y equals mx plus 3. You just have to figure out m. How do we figure out the slope? Take the derivative. Now, I get all sorts of people who want to multiply that all out. Don't. Just use a product rule. F prime of x is, what's the derivative first part? 4x cubed, 15x squared, minus 6 times x squared minus x plus 1. Plus 2x minus 1 times x to the fourth plus 5x cubed minus 6x plus 3. And sometimes I'll get people that do the product rule and they still go and multiply it out. You just have to plug in 0. When you plug in 0 here, what do you get? -6, 1. -1 times 3. -6 minus 3. It doesn't say to give the derivative in simplified form. Just write the equation for the line. So see how I can ask a question that involves multiple parts for you? I think we better save this one for Monday. And it will be short, folks. That will be short for Monday. It will leave you some good time. You can do most of your assignment at this point. Way to go. Way to focus on a Friday. It's tough. Yep.